So if we take a look at the worksheet we started yesterday, we were comparing the value of digits in a decimal. We were working on worksheet 1. Let me grab that real quick for you, and we'll go over some together. So in worksheet 1, they're going to give us a decimal, and there's going to be a number that shows a digit that shows up twice. And what we're comparing is which one of those times is a digit larger. So we'll go over a couple we did together. So the first problem we did, we had the number 887,755 and 93 hundredths. Both, the number had 2 5s in it. And we wanted to compare the 5 in the tens place to the 5 in the ones place. So we have a worksheet that we worked on together in class yesterday. And these are the steps I suggested you follow when you do it. Okay, now I realize that you may get to the point, is that note card on the floor yours? You may get to the point where you don't need to follow these steps to do it, and that's our goal. But these steps seem to help people out. It's a systematic approach to making sure you figure out which one has more value and if it's more or less. So we suggested that after you read the question, is that you, John, or somebody else making the noise? Okay, please don't make noises while I'm teaching. Figure out which number gets mentioned last, and we're going to start there, and I'll tell you why we're going to start there in a minute. Then we're going to determine which direction we would have to go to get to the first number mentioned. Aubrey, I need you to turn and face me or the screen and not be looking at your classmates. I don't want to have to stop class to help you pay attention because it's not polite to everybody else. So we're going to find the one they talk about first. We're going to figure out the value of that one. So we did several of them together on this worksheet. And now today, we're going to review that. So I'm going to, in the first one, they asked about the 5 in the tens place first. They asked about the 5 in the ones place second. So we said that's the last one they asked about. We underlined that 5. We circled the first one they asked about. We can look at it and say, well, that 5 is on the left. It's going to be larger. Okay, you will spend some time with me at recess, and so will you. It will get longer the more often you do that. I need you to pay attention. I gave you a reminder a minute ago, and you're sitting there causing me not to teach because I have to deal with your behavior. Turn and face the front of the room. Pick up your chairs and move. We should have you apologizing to your classmates for taking up their time. Okay, so this is to the left. We know because it's on the left is bigger because we've been saying left is larger and right is smaller. So we know it's bigger. The tricky part is figuring out how much bigger. Okay, well, it's 1 spot away. What's a number with 1 0 in it? 10. It's 10 times larger. Okay. Now, the one thing we talked about was when it's larger, we're going to say it's times larger. When it's smaller, we're going to say it's a fraction of. Okay? So we're going to jump down here now to problem number 6 and do it together. How many people got problem number 6 done on their own? Good for you. Pat yourselves on the back. You're more responsible and a little bit harder working right now than some of your classmates. I just did it. Okay, let's take a look at this. In this problem, I'm going to make this screen a little bit smaller. We need to read the question to understand what they want us to do. And it says the 1 in the hundreds place is blank the value of the 1 in the hundredths place. Okay, we want to figure out which one gets mentioned last. And it's this one right here. So we want to start there. So now we have to know, circle the THS on hundredths. Circle the THS on hundreds, please, on number 6. Aubrey, that's the second time I've said it. Okay. You got it circled? Okay. Now, that tells us it's going to be on what side of the decimal point? Right. The right side. So I'm going to go find the 1 on the right side and underline it. That's where we're going to start. Then what's the first one they ask about? The 1 in the hundreds place. So I go to the decimal point. I use my memory of place value, ones, tens, hundreds. This is the one they want the value of. If we look at that, can we tell where it's at? Is it left or right of the one we started on? Everybody? Okay, so it's going to be larger. And that's going to mean it's going to be so many times greater. Now we have to figure out how many times greater it is. Well, how many hops away from this one is it? That's 1, 2, 3, 4. What's a number with 4 zeros in it? 10,000. So this one has a value 10,000 times greater. So my answer is going to be 10,000 times. Because it is 10,000 times greater than the value of the 1 in the hundreds. Everybody with me? Makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at the next problem. The 7 in the hundreds place is the first number they mentioned. Circle the THS on hundreds. That's going to be behind the decimal point. How much of the value of the 7 in the tens place? Underline this.
You skipped 7.
We did skip 7. Let's do 8 because this is the one I want to do anyway because it's going to be a fraction. I want to show you that. So 7 in the tens place. I come up here and I find the 7 in the tens place because that's the last one that got mentioned. It is, 7 in the tens place. And the 7 in the tens place is 10 right here. Underline the 7 on the left side of the decimal point. And the first one we talked about was a 7 in the hundreds. That's behind it. They want to know the value of this 7 that's circled compared to the one that's underlined. It's on the right, which means it's going to be smaller or a fraction of. So we're going to write a fraction to talk about how big it is. Okay, how far apart are these numbers? 1, 2, 3. So it's a number with 3 zeros, which would be what? 1,000. So the 7 in the hundreds place is 1/1000th the value of the 7 in the tens place. It's going to be a fraction because it's to the right, it's smaller. How did we figure out we were going to have 3 zeros, Grant?
Because it's going.
It's 3 spaces away, right? Okay. If we look at number 7, the 8 in the hundreds place is what? How many times the value of the 8 in the tens place? We mentioned the tens place first. Let's go find it. It's right here on the left of the decimal point. Which one got mentioned last? Or which one got mentioned first? The one in the hundreds. THS tells me it's going to be behind the decimal point. How far apart are they? So to get from here to there, I have to go 1, 2, 3 place values. So we're going to have another answer where it's 1/1000th the value. And we know that because we had to move to the right, that's going to be a fraction. Okay. Now just a real quick reminder, our answers look like this. We're going to have number 8, we put 1, 2, 3. This should be, we wrote that one down wrong. And number 7, we're going to say it's 1/1000th. Okay. So we'll continue to work on this a little bit. The big ideas, left is larger, right is smaller. If we go to the left, it's going to be so many times bigger. If we go to the right, it's going to be a fraction of the number we're comparing it to. The way we can remember that, it's a couple different ways. We can say, if this is 1, what's this? Who knows? If we say this is 1, what's this, Grant?
10.
It's 1/10. So if I wrote this number down, it would be 1.1. How much bigger is this than this? 10 times bigger. Because it takes 10 of these to cover that up. If I asked you what the value of this is, compared to this. It's on the right. It's smaller. It's going to be a fraction. It's 1 out of how many?
10.
One spot. It's going to be 1/10. Okay, of 1. So this, the reason we know that it's going to be a fraction is this is not all of this. This is part of this. It would take 10 of these. Takes 10 of these to equal 1 of these. So 1 of these 10s is 1 out of 10. So when it's to the right, it's a fraction. When it's to the left, it's a whole number. It's times, okay? So we're going to move on to a new lesson today. We're going to start talking about powers of 10. So I need materials people. Come up and see me. Okay. Hang on to your worksheet. We'll talk about that later. Evelyn, can you pick up the phone and say Mr. Green's room very politely? 3, 4, 4. How many, Malachi?
4.
How many, Natasha de los Santos? That's just fun to say. Yes, sir. I prefer, is it an emergency? I prefer you wait for the lesson. Okay. 2, just you and Johnny Boy? Small group today? Yeah.
I'm cold.
I want to be there.
Who?
Alex. It's not lucky.
She's not skipping school, she's sick.
I thought she went to Florida.
Okay, she went to Florida, then got back, and now she's home. She's not having fun. I wouldn't go saying I'd want to be her.
Never mind.
She might be watching this video right now. No. All right, everybody ready? Okay.
She's watching it to get smarter.
Okay, here we go. When we take a look at our worksheet, we're gonna call this a mixed practice worksheet because we're gonna work on 2 things. We're gonna work on finding a fraction of something and finding something something that's greater. We're also gonna work on comparing the value of a decimal, which is what we've been working on. Okay, so we have been doing decimal of the day, and in decimal of the day, this would be written a little bit differently. It would look like this: 300 divided by 1/10. Because when we ask for 1/10 of something, we're taking a large number and breaking it up into smaller pieces. Now think about this. What does it mean when I ask for 1/10 of something? Well, the something we're talking about is 300. Does everybody understand the concept of 300? We want to break 300 into 10 groups that are the same size. A fraction, the numerator, the top number, the number on the left. Michaela, can you stay with me, please? The number on the left is the numerator, tells you how many pieces you have. And the one on the right tells you how many pieces you want to break. This is broken up into. If I take 300 and divide it into groups of 10, does anybody know how many that's going to be? Brad?
I think 30.
He thinks 30. Do you agree, Zach?
Yeah, I just want to say something. Shouldn't it be 300 divided by 10?
Yes, you are correct.
You can.
Yeah. Thank you. Should be 300 divided by 10. So if I say 1/10 of something, that's like taking the number and dividing it by 10. What if I said 300? What if I wanted 1/100th of 300? That would be like saying 300 divided by 100. Okay, does everybody understand that? Jersey, are you with me? You don't have something distracting you with your hand, do you? Stay with me. All right, so if we think about how we did decimal of the day, think about how we do decimal of the day, right? We spent some time on that the other day, and we said, first we figure out if you're multiplying or dividing. We said when we multiply, a number gets bigger and the digits move to the left, and it makes it look like the decimal point moves to the right. But when we divided, we said the numbers get smaller, and it makes it look like the decimal point moves to the left. And how did we figure out how far it was going to move? By the number of zeros. Pay attention to this, Jenny. This is crucial to your understanding. Okay, so if I have the number 300 and there's not a decimal point written down, where is the decimal point?
Nowhere.
It's behind the ones, right? If you look up at the chart on the wall, the decimal point becomes between the ones and the tenths. So in the number 300, we don't put a decimal point because we don't have any digits behind it, but we know that the decimal point goes behind the ones. Everybody look at the chart up there. You all see that? That behind the ones is a decimal point. Now, if the decimal point of 300 is here, and we're going to move it to the left, and we're going to move it one spot because there's a 1 0. Watch my screen, please. I move it once, and the decimal point goes between the 0 and the 0. That's the same thing as 30. 30.0 is the same thing as 30. So let's take a look at what happened to our numbers. We started with 300. How many zeros are in 300?
2.
And how many zeros do we have in our answer?
1.
So when we divided by 1/10, it was like taking a 0 away, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Why did we take 1 0 away? Because 10 has 1 0. Okay, now listen, this is important to our lesson today. Sit up, Caden. Is we can do that taking zeros away when the number we're dealing with has nothing but one digit and the rest are zeros. Okay? And so since the rest are zeros, we can just subtract a 0. So if I were to turn my paper over and say, okay, well, if that's the case, what's 1/100th of 300? That's the same thing as saying 300 divided by 100. Okay? And we said when we have a number with a 3 and did nothing but zeros, and we divide, that's like subtracting zeros. Christian, how many zeros do you think I should subtract from my original number? 2. So 300 divided by 100 is 3. What did we do? We had 2 zeros here. We're dividing. We took away 2 zeros. Now, let's see if that's true. Are there 100 threes in 300? Yeah. Are there 3 100s in 300?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's correct. Look at what we did here. We said 1/10 of 300. Well, are there 10 30s in 300? Yes. So the shortcut to this, the shortcut we're going to learn is when our number just has zeros in it and we're dividing, we can subtract the same number of zeros as the number we're dividing by. But what's going to happen here? Can I subtract zeros from 5,237?
Can I explain what happened?
Pardon me?
May I please explain what I think?
In just a second. Brad, what's your question or comment?
I think I told you this yesterday, but I found a shortcut to figuring out left, right.
Yeah.
So if it's dividing, it starts with a D. So that means you go that way, which is it's more,
Farther in the alphabet?
yeah.
Okay.
And then X is an X. Well, the times is an X, so it's farther down the alphabet.
Okay, so it get bigger. It's a shorter distance to D than it is to X. Okay, so it's a bit bigger. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so let's take a look at this. When I say, what is 1/100th of 5,237? That's like saying divide. When we say 1/100th of, that's like dividing. So let's watch what would happen. If this was a decimal of the day, I'm going to rewrite 1. Evelyn, can you answer that? I'm going to rewrite 1/100th of 5,200. Or 1/100th of 5,237. Kylan, go to the guidance office. Okay, so take a look here. Are you confused, buddy?
Yeah.
Okay. Saying 100 to 5,237 is the same thing as saying 5,237 divided by 100. Because when we say 1/100th, that means, everybody look up here, we want to divide this into smaller groups of 100. How many hundreds are there in 5,237? So now this looks like decimal of the day, right? When we divide, what happens to the decimal? Does it move right or left?
Left.
Left. How are we going to know how far it moves?
By counting the zeros.
Did you need something from Aubrey? Okay, so let me ask you that question again. Grant, how do we know how far our decimal point is going to move?
By the sign where, like.
No, the question was, how do I know how far my decimal point is going to move to the left? Keegan?
By counting the two.
By counting the 2 zeros. Remember doing that on decimal of the day? Where is the decimal point at right now in 5,237? No.
Behind it. Between the.
We just talked about this.
Behind the seven.
When we have a whole number, if they don't show us a decimal, where's the decimal always at? Behind the ones. Which one of these numbers is in the ones place value? 7. So our decimal point's right here, right now. It needs to move what direction? Left. Okay, look. Left, because we're dividing. The numbers are going to move to the right. They're going to get smaller. Makes the decimal point move to the left. How many spots? 2. So on your paper, you can write 52.37. Now, how did we figure that out? Let's review, okay? 1/100th of is the same as saying divided by. How far did we move our decimal point?
2.
2 spots. When we divide, we make the number smaller, the decimal point moves to the left. So we were here, we moved it 2 spots and put it between the 2 and the 3. Okay? Now, check this out. Write the number that's 10 times larger than 74. Okay? When we multiply a number by 10, what do we do to it? Christian?
Add a 0.
Add a 0.
So 704.
Just add a 0.
I thought he was saying.
Now, here's the other thing we can do, Peyton. We could say, well, that's like multiplying, right? When we multiply, the decimal point moves right 1 spot. In 74, the decimal point's behind the 4. Move it 1 spot. You got 740. Okay. Does that make sense, Michaela? Okay. So now write a number that's 100 times, which means the decimal point's moving
2 times.
right because the numbers are getting bigger, and it's going to move 2 times. In the number 120, the decimal point's behind the ones, so we can just move over twice, or we could say, when you multiply by 10, you add a 0. When you multiply by 100, you add 2 zeros. So the number's 12,000.
Is that a comma?
That's a comma. Okay. So if we're multiplying by 100, we add 2 zeros. We multiply by 10, we add 1 zero. If we multiply by 1,000, we add
3 zeros.
3 zeros. So that's a 9 with 3 zeros on it. Right? Okay. Grant, did you see somebody check you? What do you think she was trying to tell you? Did you do that? Sometimes I think we're just stubborn and we don't want people telling us what to do, right? So we decide, I don't care if she's right, I'm not going to do it. Does that help you? You should be thankful. Say, all right, thanks, appreciate it. All right, let's do a couple together. Let's do 1/10 of 24. So write that on the back of your paper. Write that on the back of your paper. 1/10 of 24. Did you get a paper handed out to you today, Bob? You guys all have one of these, right?
I just got handed it now. It was just buried under 100.
Okay. So 1/10 of 24 would equal what? Let's think about what this means. It means we're dividing, which means the number's going to get smaller. For the number to get smaller, the decimal point has to go left. So my answer is going to be what? 2.4. Who can explain why it's 2.4? Seth.
Because dividing it moves the decimal, so
Dividing moves the decimal point to the left. How do you know how far?
by 1 because it's 1 0, and then the decimal would be behind the 2, so that would make it 2.4.
Yeah, the decimal point was behind the 4. We move it one spot to the left, it's 2.4. Okay, now let's do this. One-tenth of 24.6. Lily, is that your ice pack or Jenny's? Yours? Okay. All right, 1/10 of 24.6. 1/10 of means divide. So the decimal point's gonna move to the left. What's my answer, Seth?
2.4 tenths and
Think about this.
600.
Yeah, so where's the decimal point go? Tell me that.
Forward, so it'd be in front of the 4 behind.
So now the decimal point's gonna be between the 4 and the 2 because it's gonna move to the left to one spot because we're dividing by 10. So your answer is 2 and 46/100. Okay, everybody with me on that? Okay. So what I want you to do now is this is just like what we were doing yesterday. So you can refer to the top of the sheet we used yesterday that has the guidelines, and I don't know what I did with mine. I had it in my hand a minute ago. That has the guidelines. We're going to start with the last number mentioned. Things are moving on me.
What is it?
Here it is. No, it's not. You can use the steps on the top of this worksheet. Figure out which number gets mentioned last. Start there. Figure out which direction you have to move to get to the first number. Count the jumps. It's either going to be 10 times greater or one fraction up. So solve problem number 6 for me. I'm going to step out. I'll be right back. So get that problem done. Problem number 6.
I'm thinking.
Okay. Did Hunter get called down to the office?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
Highland and Winter.
Okay. I was thinking he went to the bathroom and had to come back yet.
So you went out and checked on him?
Okay, so are you following the steps? Which number gets asked about last? So the one in the hundreds place, that gets asked about first. And the one in the thousands place gets asked about last. So I'm going to find the one in the thousands place. Ones, tens, hundreds. We're going to start here because that's the one that gets mentioned last. We want to compare it to the one in the hundreds place, which is right there. If we look at that, can we tell the value of the circled one compared to the underlined one?
Yeah.
It's on the right, which means it's going to be smaller, which means your answer is going to be a fraction. Okay, and John says it's gonna be 1/10. John, tell him why you know it's gonna be 1/10.
Because it's one hop.
One hop, okay? So my answer is gonna be that one in the hundreds place is 1/10 of the one in the thousands place. Good job, good work, John. So that's 1/10 of the value. And it makes sense, right? Because if you had 100, how many hundreds does it take to equal 1,000? 10 of them, right? So 1/100 is 1/10 of what it takes to equal 1,000. Seth.
That next one, it is one 10,000.
1/10,000?
1 over 10,000.
Okay, so you think that one's a fraction too? Let's check and see if he's right. The 6 in the thousands place, that's the first number mentioned, is how much of the value of the 6 in the millions place. So I'm going to go find the 6 in the millions place. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000, 100. This is the millions place. We're going to start there, and we're going to compare it to the one in the thousands place, which is right here. I can tell you, I know Seth is right about one thing. It's going to be a fraction because it's to the right. So the value of this is going to be part of the value of this. Parts of something are fractions. Now, how far? 1, 2, 3. A number with 3 zeros is 1,000. It's going to be 1/1000th. The value, is that what you said, Seth?
I said 1 10,000.
Well, let's count. We start here, go 1, 2, 3. 3 zeros. You had the right idea. You're doing a lot of stuff right. You just miscounted. Okay.
Yeah, I thought it's 4.
But the thing that it tells me is you understand the concept. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at number 8. Do you want to do it together or do you want to do it on your own? How many people want to do it together? How many people want to do it on your own? Okay, let's do it together. Okay. Do the top part, you mean? We'll do that later. Do you want me to go over it with you?
Can we do 9 and 10?
Okay, so we'll do 8 together. We'll do 9 and 10 on our own.
Okay.
Hey, listen. Don't ask him that. Because someday you might be in the same situation. You may not want to talk about it. Okay. The 5 in the 100,000s place is blank the value of the 5 in the ones place. We talk about this 5 first, but for the last one is the 5 in the ones. That's right here. So we're going to start there and see which direction we have to go to get to the 5 in the thousands. The 5 in the thousands is, wait a minute, the 5 in the 100,000s is right here. Okay, so now we got to ask ourselves, how do I get from this last number mentioned to the other number mentioned? We go left, which means that my answer is going to be times. It's going to be bigger. Okay? Now, how many times bigger? Let's count how many hops we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need 5 zeros.
So we had that dot.
So 100,000 times larger. Yes. Can you do a dot instead of an X?
Yeah.
Let's just use X's right now. Dot does mean multiply, but let's just use X's in my room. Yes.
So my question is, do we count the 5 when we're counting? So
Yes, you
5
count the
more.
place values. How do you get from one to the other?
Well, I got 1 million times.
So watch this. You ready? Count how many hops. You don't count the one you start on. Okay. So because this is in one place value. So what we're counting is we're really counting place values. How many place values to the left do I have to go?
5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So don't count the one you start on.
Because I got 1 million.
Yeah.
That's how I got
10,000. That makes sense. So don't count the one you start on. Don't count the place values. Count the hops. So that's when I draw this. You can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hops. Okay, and we're jumping 5 place values. So we're actually 10 to the 5th power greater. Because 10 to the 5th power means 100,000. Okay, finish 9 and 10 on your own, and then we'll go over answers.
You didn't freeze it.
I know I didn't freeze it.
He's gonna show us if we did it wrong.
I thought you were giving us the answer.
Not if you're working hard and not looking up.
I got it.
Yeah.
So easier is whenever you get the answer, you count the zeros.
Yep.
Then add the.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
I understand.
And I'll talk about that in just a second. Think you got it?
This one.
Okay, so which one? It doesn't really matter where you start, but I have you start there because then you can see it's on the left or on the right. Okay, so this was the last one they mentioned. So we start on the tens place. That's behind the decimal point. To get to the other one, I got to go left. That means my answer is going to be times. Because I have to go left, so it's going to be times. It's going to be larger. Okay, so now we know, now watch. How far from here to here? 1, 2. That's 100. Okay, everybody have a seat. Let's go over this together. If you have a question, see if I answer your question in my explanation. If I don't, then I'll take questions. Okay. All right. So on number 9, it says their question is the 3 in the ones place is blank the value of the 3 in the tens place. So based on the guidelines I've given you, Kylan, do you need help? Okay, can you look up front, Aubrey? Do you need help? Okay. So the 3 in the ones place is what's the value of the 3 in the tens place? We're going to find the one that gets mentioned last, and we're going to start there. Now, tens doesn't have a TH, so I'm going to go over here and say there's a decimal point. This is the tens right here. And the first one mentioned was the 3 in the ones place, which is behind it, which is this one here. So to get from here to here, I have to go right. That tells me it's going to be a fraction, because if I have to go right, that number is smaller. It's going to be part. And that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
How many 3s does it take to equal 30? 10 of them. 30 is 10 times greater, so 3 is 10 times less, or 1/10. Now, I go to the right one spot, so I have a fraction with 1 0. 3 is 1/10 of 30, and I can lay out 30 of these, and I'd get 30 of these would look like this, right?
Yes.
Okay, and 3 would be 3/10, right? So one of these would be 1/10. So that kind of shows why it's a fraction. The next one, they want to compare the 5 in the tens place to the value of the 5 in the tens place. I circle THS because that tells me that this 5 is going to be behind the decimal point. This is the second one mentioned. Grant, I think you'd retain a lot more if you sit up and keep your head off your desk. This is going to be behind the decimal point. That's where we're going to start. So we're going to start here. And the first one they mentioned is in the tens place. Well, that's to the left. Can you all notice that the one circle's on the left? That means I'm going to multiply, or it's going to be 10 times bigger, or so many times bigger. How much bigger? Let's count. 1, 2. It's going to be 100 times bigger because the 100 has 2 zeros. Okay. Show me where you're at on this. Okay. So more practice will make it better. Now because we had Kylan that wasn't in the room when we did it, let's do some more of the stuff at the top. So turn your paper over and just do this on the back with me. If I say write a number that is 1/100th of 400, write that down.
Under the 1 out of 24.3.
Just put it on the back of your worksheet. Yeah. Just put it in a blank spot. Yep. So I've got 1/100th of 400. This fraction tells me we're going to divide 400 into groups of 100. The bottom number, right, Brad? The denominator tells me we want groups of 100. How many 100s do you think there are in 400, Jersey? How many 100s would it take to equal 400?
She said
Jersey did? Jersey, did you speak?
No, she didn't.
Tell Seth thanks for the help. Go ahead, tell him. Say thanks for the help. But I don't need it. Tell him. Okay. If you had 400, how many hundreds would it take to equal 400, Jersey? Tell me to stop when I get to 400. Yeah. So it would take 4 of them, right? So 1/100 to 400 should be 4. Okay. Let's show you the method to make sure. When we ask for a fraction of something, we're dividing, right? If the number we're dividing, listen, this is key. If the number dividing has one number and then nothing but zeros, we can subtract zeros from the original number. How many zeros should I subtract?
2.
The same number that are in my fraction, right, John? So how many numbers? I have 2. So what's 4 minus 2 zeros? 4.
300.
No. 4 minus 2 zeros is 4. If I take 2 zeros off of 400, I'm left with 4. So here's the deal. The decimal point moves to the left when you divide. If it was here and I move it twice, it's going to give me 4.0, right? Which is the same as this. Because this is a number with nothing but zeros. So if I do 1/10 of 400,
That'll be 40.
that's dividing. I'm going to take zeros away. How many? 1, 40. Okay. Now turn it around. We can check and see if we're right? If 1/10 of 400 is 40, that means 40 times 10 would be 400. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's confusing, but I sort of
1/10 of 600.
60.
We're dividing. So we're going to take away zeros. How many zeros? 1. 60. If this is true, 1/10 of 600, watch. If 1/10 of 600 is 60, then 60 times 10 should be 600. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I'm gonna throw a monkey wrench at you.
Okay.
That means it's a problem.
Okay.
1/10 of 23.23. Now, can we subtract zeros?
Yeah.
Pay attention. No, I can't. Because the original number has numbers that aren't zeros. I can't just subtract zeros. Now I got to think. 1/10 of means divide. When we divide, decimal points move left. How far?
1 spot.
So I'm going to take and write the same numbers down. My decimal was here. Now it's going to be here. 2.323.
That's how I solved it.
So here's the deal. When the number isn't all zeros, you can't subtract zeros. When it's got other digits in it, you have to remember when we divide a fraction, or when we divide a number, that's decimals are going to move to the left. Numbers get smaller, they move to the right. So look, these 2 10s that were 20 moved over to the ones. Now they're 2 1s. They got smaller, didn't they? These 3 1s became 3 10s. So the numbers got smaller, moved to the right, which made the decimal point move to the left. Christian.
At each 0 in the number is each time you move the decimal over to the left.
Each zero is a place value, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So if that's the case, let's take the same number and see if you're paying attention, Jersey, and everybody else.
I think I know the answer. I know it.
Okay. 1/100. It's a fraction, so we're dividing, which means we're moving left. How far left? 2 times. Okay, my decimal point was between the 3 and the 2. 2 times, my new answer is 0.2323.
That's what I have.
Okay, yes, sir.
So we only put a 0 in there
If our
our decimals is in front of like
all the numbers.
we only put a 0.
Yep. And you know what? If you talk to some math experts, they'll tell you this is okay.
But that's
I understand.
But some prefer to have a 0 there. But you know what? If you ask me how to say this, I wouldn't say 0 and. I'd just say 2,323 10,000ths.
0 is not.
Yeah, because the 0 has no value. You can say it. You can say 0 and, but you wouldn't need to. Okay, so we're going to assess you on this in a day or two. exactly this kind of stuff. Okay, you need to be able to do what we just did. You need to be able to compare value of decimals. Now, I talked to my class, this method, this procedure I'm teaching you where we figure out which number gets mentioned last and then start there. They like it. It helps some of them. Do you have to do it that way? No. But for some of you where we're struggling with this a little bit, having a procedure and a systematic way to do it helps eliminate mistakes. Okay, so hopefully it's making some sense. The more we practice it, the more it'll make sense. Okay? Any questions? All right. Yes, sir.
Are we gonna have homework?
Are you going to have homework today? Yes.
Yay!
What is it?
But here's the problem. When I give you homework, do you do it?
Yes.
I'll try.
So let's do this. I'm going to give you homework, and people that have it done tomorrow when they get here will get some sort of reward.
15,000.
Hey, come here and get your, send your materials, people up here. Two for John.
Can we get
We need 3.
4?
Group.
So much time.
I'll give you a number.
15.
How many, Lily? Okay, this isn't as easy as you think it is. Look up here. Look up here. Let's do number 1 together. Okay, if you can hear me, then I shouldn't hear you. Sit down and look up here. Aubrey, Keegan, have a seat, please. Get your worksheet in front of you. Should not be in a folder. All right. This is what we were working on yesterday. We sent out for homework. So we're going to find the last number mentioned. They asked about the 9 in the hundreds and the 9 in the thousands. So I'm going to go underline the 1 in the thousands. And I'm going to start there. Okay. Which number they want to know the value of? Which one's mentioned first? The 9 in the hundreds. Now I can look at that and I have a visual. That's to the right. It's going to be smaller. That means it's going to be a fraction. Okay. How much smaller?
1.
1. I need a fraction with 1 0.
1/10.
The 9 in the hundreds is 1/10 the value of the 9 in the thousands.
Isn't this the same paper?
It's not the same paper. It's the same kind of work with different numbers. Now let's do the next one. The 4 in the 10,000s place is what value, what it compared to the value of the 4 in the thousands. I'm going to underline this. That's the last one mentioned. I'm going to circle THS. That tells me I'm going to find this 4. Can you sit down and do this with me? That tells me I'm going to find this 4 behind the decimal point. So we're going to start right there. Which one do they want to compare it to? The 4 in the 10,000s. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. I can very easily look at this if I do it like this and say, that 4 is on the left. It's going to be bigger. I'm going to say times. How many times bigger? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We need 7 zeros. That's not going to fit here, is it?
10 million.
10 million times larger.
Yep.
So my answer here is that's how you do your homework. Okay. You could always make sure that you have this with you when you take it home so you've got the guidelines. Okay. Anybody that didn't get talked to about not paying attention today may go. If I didn't have to stop and say you need to pay attention or look up here or get your head off your desk, you may go.
You said drop your pencil.
What?
You said pay